Cool as cucumber crickets anymore. Well, we certainly turned the week and the weather here this last week. Summer not coming back. We may get some little bit of Indian summer heat, but not much more. And so, what do we do here as a society, folks? Are the cricket's going to go to sleep completely? It's sure looking close, isn't it? It's kind of interesting to listen to people describe. People are seeing that this is a foot race, in essence. It's going to come down right to the wire, I think. I'm not liking that, but I guess that's the way this works. If you haven't quite got the idea that there's been an environment established for you to accept, you're not really paying attention, or you don't want to pay attention. At some point, there's just no way to get around the fact that something isn't right, and by now people should have really been asking these questions, that the lot of them or not ought to cause you a bit of concern. It doesn't really take a lot of us. It does take a few, but it doesn't take everybody. But again, the numbers of properly acting people, not acting like a stage, but putting action engagement involved in stopping the nonsense that you hear out in the world today, requires that you figure out how to properly engage it. So that's not my decision. That's not me telling you what to do. That's the fact of it. And it's really amazing to me to watch out in the world. You look at the people that are the movers and the shakers in the world and of the world, that thing we're not really supposed to be a part of, and we should work real hard to figure out how not to be a part of it. Then you get to see what it is. It's not transparent to you no more. You see it. We get to watch out in the world what the movers and the shakers of the world are doing to bring on the oppression, the control, the possession of you. And one of the things that we can see, as I've said before, this new world order supposed, it's really an ongoing old world order that's modifying, adapting to gain more control over more people, is an economic energy. You can reduce it to energy. This thing called money is like an energy. It causes the system that's been established to function. You have the ability to engage it or not, and it's really, really difficult to not engage it in all ways. But so that means that you have to have a transition point at some point where you diminish the interaction. But I've been pointing out the mirror that the international specter is to the United States, as driven by the United States, and as the United States as a government works in the world as a plunderer to advance this whole agenda. It's part of one of the tools, actually, for this global order coming on, which is one of just oppression, destruction, control. Be the ultimate commune in the negative, in the political sense, the worst type, and not really looking at communism as the only thing. There's many facets. It all just depends on who's really making the decisions and where the policies come from, because you don't have law anymore. And so you have to really start paying attention to these things. And when you do, you just gain a different insight. And like I've said before, and in particular hearing Ron come on in UCY and his talking, he's researched this for decades like I have. He's come essentially to the same conclusion. This is what you see. This is the thing. The thing is not transparent to you that is attacking you. So not only do you see it, you see what it is, and you start to see what's going to take. Now, everyone who sees that, as I was talking, even William Roberts, for the first guy I'd heard talking about these things, other than myself and the studies I came at it, coming from different places, we found ourselves standing shoulder to shoulder looking at the same stinking thing, the stinking abyss that was coming on the world. People were actually being sucked into, sliding into, because they weren't working to crawl out and stand on the edges and look at it and try to figure out, okay, we're here, we're not in it, we're not of it, but there's people that need to be knowing and saved from it because it's their destruction. That I've been talking about this in my way. William Roberts talked about it in his way. You hear Ron talk about it in his way. You hear everybody who's looking at this thing really speaking the same language. And that's really a way that you identify who isn't looking at the right thing and who will profess solutions and never be able to bring them to you because they can't. But they think they can. They can offer you something. All I can offer you is methods of addressing the problem and hope that there's enough of us out there addressing it, the problem that we see the wrong that we need to make right in our particular way that maybe makes the difference. We never know when the next shoulder coming to push the wagon back on the road that is driven off the road. We never know when the next shoulder is going to be the one that puts it up, but it's going to take all of us doing that at the time we're doing that. That it makes it pretty tentative. Are we going to get the wagon of a way of life that was allowed for us to see? Because I don't think we fulfilled it. Are we going to fulfill the wagon of life? Or are we going to let someone, this global international nature, take us over as it has somewhat been planned about? Almost the challenge. We're going to set this up. Are you going to be big enough and righteous enough, if you will, if I can say righteous, but it is a righteousness, are you to keep it from us? Because we're concentrated evil. We know the world, and we are the world, and we control the world. Are you going to be real upstanding people to be able to stop that? Well, that requires that you stop it. And this is just the way international law works out. Like I said, I don't like it. I'd rather sit in the peaceness of the peace and just go along with my life and do the mistakes I would have made up without all that. But there's a trespasser in the world, and we have to address that. That we look out in the world, and we see the movers and shakers doing things. And I've been saying, well, look at this is the things that they're giving you. The clues of what they do is what you need to do, but in the proper direction for your security, that they want to say they're protecting. Your safety, your independence, ultimately. That interesting story comes up. We're going to go international here for a little bit. Big things are moving in the international spectrum, and I'll bring it back. And I've really got a lot of tabs to go through. I want to get to this other thing I'm telling you about that's on us. This is the month, folks, that they bring out, they roll it out on us. And I told you that back in January or so. I can't remember exactly when the Pope popped his little head up and he made his statement. I said, here it comes, because this is what we've kind of been looking to see as the global order coagulates. It becomes the big blood clot that it is. That Putin says they're going to dump the dollar is another thing. And again, let me tell you, just for you should dump the dollar. You should be getting into a trustable medium of exchange. It's not controlled by the system of things. That could be weight and measure coin. That could be about anything that's trustable, and it could be these independent currencies. So you have to get into a medium of exchange that's not the supposed dollar. This thing is not a dollar, actually. It's a buck. It's a note. It's an evidence of debt, to whom we haven't really figured out. We can surmise. But it's not lawful money in the sense that it's not property being exchanged for property. And that's really what we're looking for. And across the board, we're looking for that generally. That Putin says he's going to dump the dollar is, I thought, big news. Like the little bitty story that never really seemed to go anywhere, that we were told that an Israeli jet was shot down by Syria here the weeks ago. And I said, there's something else afoot here. And then you heard all this stuff that's coming down that we're going to tie into right now. But Putin this week has said they're going to dump the dollar. And then you look very carefully. They're going to make a currency that they're going to use that's supposed, it is at the local level, it's independent of the international system. And they're going to dump the dollar in favor of the creation of a single financial market. Now, that's a market, not a currency. But they're going to have a market here. So now we have what I'll tell you is called a regional market. And they actually say it in the article, and you can read it. The bill that he's proposed would also help to facilitate. Now, facilitate is, as I've told you, consensus-based, outcome-based. In other words, the fix is in when you get involved with the system. It's the facilitation into that fallen condition that you have no control over. That this bill will facilitate trade. That's in commerce. Remember how this is how this is all working. I keep telling you about that, and I keep telling you that's how one of the analyses you can do of the Constitution, that between the Declaration of Independence and the writing of the Constitution, however you believe in all that, there were quite a few commerce agreements. The Constitution, of which that came right after, look at Article 6 very carefully, makes recognition, acknowledgement, and acceptance of the engagement and debts therefrom as law of the land. To tell you that, I tell you this a long time ago, I'll tell you one more time here, that was really should tell you this thing started on the wrong direction to begin with, on the political commerce side. That you see today, the same story, that they're going to facilitate trade in the region. That's regional governance. That's a veneer of government. If you can, I can't say really government because it's really a different thing. It's a bureaucracy. It's a governance. We tie it to corporatism, corporate nature. It's a legal entity. It's really not even a legal entity. Somewhat. It's because it's not has like the UN. Where is the UN registered its paper? What sovereignty did it come through? That would be an interesting study for some of you to do. And then you'll understand where this kind of comes. But generally, if you look out in the world, it has no place it started from. Oh, it was given a place to go sit and rest over there in New York. As I've told you, they should knock that building over, use it as a big raft, throw everybody that believes in sustainable development, and they should be forced to paddle themselves back over to the pond, over to the Europe, over the pond. So I've said this over and over and over again. I don't know if anybody appreciates some of this. That they come in and they have this regional governance, that they then take a nation and turn it into a state within that has no that organization that has no actual authority, that people abide as authority, as money, as law. All this stuff is but not really. That he comes in, this Putin. I said I appreciate Putin for the statesmanship that Russia's doing in the world. I appreciate how they're handling. I appreciate the gameplay that they do. But I've told you, watch this guy. And he's not different, actually. And so that here we have the first proofs that they're moving. Russia is moving in their region of influence now. Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, all those stands, maybe even Kazakhstan. Maybe they're close on the north, but we don't know. That's not listed here. But all this region that's now developed, this is a bureaucratic region, is to facilitate a commerce and to achieve macroeconomic stability. Well, macroeconomic stability to what? When you went to a region, that didn't talk the entirety. So macroeconomic, the region must be part of something else. That we're now seeing Putin is really agreeing he's still part of the world order. As we found out, the BRICS, having the officers in BRICS being IMF executives, trained where? By the City of London, and where else? The Jesuit University for Economics. So pennies should be dropping from heaven here as we start pointing where the pennies fall to hell, and then all of a sudden we have the Pope as being one of the players. That all these people are speaking right to that condition. That when they say they dropped the dollar, they're going to do shockwaves to the so-called economic system, the financial system. He's just creating another market that's still controlled by the economic order of the world that deals in whatever they'll call it. Whether we started out with the SDRs, special drawing rights, and all these other things. Now we're going to carbon tax market, which you're seeing the encyclical be brought up here in September, to advanced sustainable development, which is the global plunder plan. That I thought this story was very good to tell you. This is what you need to do. You need to get an independent situation going. You can call it your own region. I would just call it your countryside, because countryside is the non-negative word for rural, which the urban-rural plan try and defeat. The countryside is the antagonist to the fabricated urban-rural conundrum, actually. This is where we've actually addressed this with the university professors and with some states people, some states representatives, so-called. And they could not. We were able to we've analyzed this to the point we know how they've put the plan in. They've essentially taken out the backbone to the nation, which was production. And they've forced it into commerce to make a tripartite system, which is not a three-department government, which is urban and rural as a city-state relationship, where the rural are literally the serfs to support the city-state, and their university system is planning that. When they talk about urban and rural, you're actually insulting all the countryside. The countryside is all the people. It's the land and the people and the way of their life. Rural is a derogatory, low insult that you see when you see urban-rural discussions, and they always talk about urban. The academia has brought themselves up, and they will drive the entirety. They are the demand for the serfs to produce for. And we've identified all these little parts here and there, and we've addressed these to the system that is coming on us. And all we do is it's really, really simple. This is non-law that they're bringing, and so you have to just bring the antidote, which is the law. It's that simple. So when you bring the law and you show that their fabricated tripartite monster won't fit into the requirements of the law, because in the most basic essence it's a 4-part system, not a 3-part system. We can destroy everything that they have, that they think they're doing. And what they do is they facilitate trade in regions to establish micro-control areas that are a veneer of authority over your established constitutional government. The region is like a state within which these local governing bodies are like your counties making these decisions. And so they can transgress borders because they're not actually tied to the constitutional government. And all their paperwork will tell you that they do not do constitutional things. It's called adjunct policy. It's not law, it's policy, and I've told you just you spell the word P-O-L-I-C-Y, change the Y for an E, and you'll see the kind of state that you're actually living in. But this is a serious, I think, disclosure to us. If you want to separate yourself, he's talking about separating from what you think is the system, the EU system, the West system. In fact, he's just going to regionalize an economic financial market that they'll work in order to be part and parcel to the larger part, and yet they will also work to be a potential antagonist, which keeps the story on the stage interesting to everybody while we're working over the audience. And I told you that's what BRICS was about. So here it is, folks. They're moving now regionally, and this is very important development, because it will cause a perceptive challenge to the financial markets, which will work to cause the ability to thieve from more of you that are involved in that system. And a lot of that, it's kind of hard to see as someone who don't have much money and someone who isn't playing the markets, and think you're sitting back doing nothing behind your keyboard and not doing much else but thinking you know a whole lot. Or even if you go down and make a statement down to your county every once in a while, you think you're okay with it, but no, you're involved in systems that work those instruments against you, that you have to do more, a lot more, to create an example for people to follow as this thing starts to go into hyper-control. And I mean, we hear it everywhere, and I'm still astonished that people don't know how to really respond to it. Not that I can know I have 100% idea of how you actually respond to criminals, but at least I'm focused on the fact that I can identify they're a criminal and they need to be arrested, and I may not be big enough to do the arrest, but I can sure continue calling stop thief in the minimum as I pursue them, as I keep calling them. And so then you're out, and you're out and vulnerable to that, and you'll find out that there's lots of stop thieves out there. That's why no one's being stopped, because most everybody you touch that's in the system is a thief, is a plunderer. Worse than that, I'm being nice here. So this is a big development that Putin's, they're stating that they're going to go off the dollar. It would be anyway, but this is really, I wanted to show you that underneath there's a global plan still afoot, even with Putin doing what he's doing, as autonomous as he's looking. They're not. These nation states involved with this abomination called the UN, and the underlying marketing condition, the economic condition, and the underlying control structure that's even deeper than that, is all being played too. So remember that. I just really quickly, I'm not having very good success on UCY's chat, so I don't even know, even though I don't really look at the chat, I don't have any indication that you're even running right now. I suppose you are. And so I don't know. I just don't, every once in a while I do look up, but right now there's not even anything running. There hasn't been. I'm having trouble with that. So just to let you know, if I don't do any other response at all today and I don't respond to you, I can't even see if I'm even getting anything there. So anyway, going back. So last week with Russia, talking about Russia and their actions and what's being put, actually the dynamic of propaganda. I told you yesterday that, or last week, that Russian jets were reportedly in Syrian skies, but I did not commit to that. You heard me kind of hold short from saying that they had. And this has been a running theme now this week, that the story that Russian jets were over Syrian skies as operated by Russia, as an exploration mission was being brought from Russia to work in Syria to stop ISIS, was it was from an Israeli website, and that's become kind of a critical story as well. But it leads us somewhere, which is, again, the importance on how to keep up with a lot of this. That it was then forwarded by quite a few people, and I'm starting to look at some websites that I have been looking at, and just kind of keeping them in a neutral place and thinking they're more authoritative because they seem to be talking topically, and they seem to be talking reasonably. But a couple of them now have kind of bought into that whole story without really researching that it only came from one place and it wasn't supported by much. That they were saying Russian military forces has arrived in Syria and set a forward operating base near Damascus. So that was trying to be consistent with that first story, but that's right where it broke for me, because the Russians, this is not a secret. The Russians have always had a relationship with Syria. They've had contracts for military hardware. They have a sea base, a naval base there with Syria. Their military is, Russia's military is, sitting right there. That they've really always had a relationship and an engagement strategy with Syria. That it would not be a story that there was supposed a forward Russian presence, because they're already there. And so this started to fall apart a lot for me right here. That then we saw the next story come out that the White House confirmed Russia presence in Syria, warns it is destabilizing. And this was like in the most generic terms. There was no identification on this. This is coming from the same website that a lot of people kind of click around, and I'm starting to look at this website a little bit differently now. As I do, I don't spend much time to try and analyze it. When it finally comes apparent, even to the dumbest of us, like myself, sometimes not paying too close attention. Some of these propaganda websites are pretty highly rated, and they got lots of information, but they are still propaganda, and in the wrong way. Because propaganda is really just neutral. It's just information that you want. I'm giving propaganda right now. If it's my observations, and I hope you accept it. But what I actually do, take what I'm saying, find the importance in it for you. Don't throw it off. Look at the importance of it. Go research it yourself. Make that important to you to carry with you. Address the world with that new knowledge. But again, Flashpoint, White House confirms Russia presence in Syria, warns it is destabilizing. Well, it's like an ad. Like it's butter. It's it's just like butter. It's better. There's no substance behind those statements. It's just an advertisement. That this was what this was, and if it was the White House that confirmed that Russia presence in Syria, well, they're just confirming everything that everybody else already knows, and that warns it is destabilizing, just tells us, yeah, as long as Russia is there as a force to be reckoned with, it destabilizes the United States' plan to destroy Syria, a country that's done nothing to the United States, or Zio West, I should say, in that regard. And so this is, again, now we're starting to see more of a propaganda a wartime propaganda coming to advance something that's coming, that they're talking about the obvious, making it something that's news when it's not news, and because it's always been obvious, and there's nothing really new to the story. That then we now, I've always told you, it's always nice to hear from the other side that's being accused, that apparently the other side speaks. This is now Putin saying, after all this, where the United States now takes the banner up and says, yeah, it's destabilizing that Russia is there, but they've always been there. And it's probably partly why they probably didn't send cruise missiles in. And I told you that that Israeli jet that got shot down, given that was true, didn't happen by the Syrian army with some pea shooters, slingshots. That jet got taken down by some technology that probably came from Russia. I mean, Russia is a lot more integrated than they've been playing here. Even if they're just supplying the weaponry, that's a lot. That hasn't been new. And up to that level is now where we put the bar. Not that there was this other stuff that happened during the week, but now Russia states, well, this is back Putin again. And remember, he's still a player in the system. Premature to talk about Russia military action against says Putin. And so from the other side now, we hear them saying that they're not, right now, for Russia to step in, like it was stated in the report a week before, is not really part of the plan at this point. But why is the story being propagated then? At the same time, someone comes out who is, I guess, more on this than I am, and he has the same, and so this was, for me, it was a confirmation of the question for me. Someone else is calling bunkus on this as well. The most anticipated showdown in recent history is a load of bull fecal matter. Was an article, and this guy goes through, or this woman goes through, and discusses these problems with pictures that you see being proposed, that you can't really tell that they're the Russian jet fighters that were spoken of, or the time, or the place that those pictures were taken of, that are all coming as part of this meme that Russia is now coming more substantially to fight ISIS, which I've told you, I don't know why they haven't done it before. They're the better master chess players there. It's their country on the line, so I don't have an authority here. It's their relationship with Syria that's on the line. I don't have an authority here. But there is a tail of the tape, and you can see my point on here is that the iOS is totally able to lie in the heat of the moment to instigate things and to advance conditions that you in the United States, us in the United States of America, have to understand it. They'll do it to us. And they are. Well, that was in the future. That's been happening to us. I want to point out how this is done and how you can look through even our own problem, our division, and all we think we know as reporters sitting behind desks and computers and looking on the internet for proof of things going on that are maybe are or maybe not, when there's maybe more simple reasons and some more simple answers that keep us from doing what we need to be doing. And I consider myself one, for as much as I can and as much as I can keep track of it all, I'm attempting at my level best, to do what needs to be done to do something, not just talk about it or be prophetic about it or any of that stuff, but actually interfere with this while we're trying to figure out the more substantial discussion. And on that point, we had a meeting, a miners association meeting, not the district meeting, but this is the first of the month, the meeting on Friday, and I was pointing this condition out, that the Jefferson Mining District has been taking a strategy and tactic of a multifaceted attack to try and stop this, where a couple things that we're doing were really stopgap measures, while we were also turning to do answer to the aggressor directly, and we've done that in the lawsuit. So, well, in the meantime, just to explain this other part, is we established that coordination was something we could use to put a log in the wheels of the agencies, plunder against the local people and the miners, anybody actually that have public lands. And while we turned and we went after the system that allowed that, which was the Bar Association, the state itself, the political parties, the representatives that purport to be representing the people, but are actually ideologically biased to the extreme, that are bringing on this plunder. We attack that directly. And so this is and then we have to continually move on that. It's an ongoing, long-during process. We certainly could use a lot more help, but it doesn't matter. I'm committed to be doing things that whether or not I know there's a victory at the end is irrelevant. It's that I'm doing things that, again, it's a wrong that I believe needs to be righted. I believe it deeply, and I'm committed to doing that, I'm asking, that's the level of what you have to do against these kinds of things. And this propaganda that goes out on the internet that tries to, it's planting seeds in the mind of people to get them to do or not do as the very intelligent people behind the scenes that plan the social engineering are capable of doing against each one of us. And I tell you, I've told you before, and I'll say it right now because it's so important. It becomes so important to me that when I read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and realized that was a manual of our failure and our ability to be an opportunity for other people to take advantage of me and us as people, I realized at any point there could be somebody a lot sharper than I would ever think to be, a lot more devious than I could ever imagine, a lot more capable to persuade me away from my better judgment than I could ever imagine enough to protect myself. That's my main concern and focus. I'm not looking for that one, but I'm looking for the clues that I'm in the presence of that one that can do that. That requires a heightened sense of awareness, a heightened sense of consciousness, I guess I can say, a heightened sense of the reality, and to understand that there's things that can happen that you don't know about that can get you anyway. That you're looking for the clues of the glitch in the matrix, as you might understand it from the movie. When you see a glitch in the matrix, you have to analyze that glitch, and that, as I can tell you, is a protective tool. Are you going to see every glitch? Well, maybe not, but hopefully at this point you're engaged enough that those little glitches don't get you. You have enough time, even if you got caught up in something that wasn't quite in the direction you needed it to go. You have you haven't lost your balance and fallen on your face because you were aware to the problems. You couldn't quite identify. It's like one of those things like something's not quite right about that. I don't quite get it, but something's not quite right. You put that in a special study session. You keep that present in what's coming on you that you don't understand, because behind that might be a technique that you've never seen before that can defeat you if you buy into that. That this is what I think is going on in Syria. This is what's going on at the same time Putin's going to go say he's going to go against the dollar, like we're looking at some big war going on. Well, there is, but that's only to capture the audiences, entertain the audience while they're actually bringing the control set and tightening the noose even more. And even during this thing, and we hear the Zio West pushing all this on, we see the atrocities that are going on that nobody will actually point out, and then all of a sudden an atrocity of some 3-year-old being washed ashore. Now that's captured everybody's imagination, as it should. But be careful of all now. Everybody, you now forget of the hundreds of thousands of people and babies and moms and fathers and brothers and sisters that all died to get here, get washed out to sea while we're looking at one little 3-year-old washing on the shore. That this is how they do it, and they'll move us on and they'll move us beyond that. These reports come out at the same time. It's just a big amount of information that keeps you fascinated on what's going on, and they don't stop on the other side to their agenda. That it also came out at the same time. Israel is furious. These are all facades too. Israel is not a human, is not a man or woman. It has no feelings. And so these are the other thing that they humanize. I can say that they are monsters. They humanize. They try to make people like. Corporations are people too. So this is what they attempt to do. They try to get these legal entities, these fictions, these things on paper that aren't even things. They're just writings on paper. They're given human people emotions. I have trouble with that human thing. You know why. So Israel is furious. Israel can't be furious. It's an entity. It's like We sued the Bar Association. We also sued the political parties. I hope you all understand when I said that we sued the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, the members of which were their mission statement and their actions advance this plunder and usurpation. They make war on the laws of the United States. The political party that if you agree, I'm talking to my listeners here, any one of you, and anyone who's listening, if you are a party member, we sued you for making war on the United States as a legal entity. You're just a legal entity member if you put any faith and any support behind these legal parties. I hope that just brought something home to y'all. You all complain about corporations running the world, and you focus on McDonald's, or you focus on Monsanto, and you forget that the legal parties that are going on, the legal entities that run the political parties in your countries, are nothing more than the fictional writings on pieces of paper given power to destroy your lives and run agendas. Go look at their mission statement. I'll speed you up. The Democratic Party is already way past Marxism, and the Republican Party has now adopted the Democratic Party of the Kennedy times, which is approaching Marxism. And it gets worse than that. I'm saying way past Marxism. The Democratic Party's platform is so far beyond it's UN, if you know what you're looking at. And so we sued the political parties. I'm telling you as a listener, if you've been listening to me have any idea that you support Trump or you support Hillary Clinton, any of these people, you are, by that admission and the agreement that they exist in legitimacy, you are somebody that we sued as a felon for making war on the substantive laws of the land, as it is in disposed land law, to subvert the Republican form of representative government. And I don't know, I've never thought to say that until right now, but if you didn't appreciate what you do when you attack these guys and what that does to the masses who have bought into this stuff, I guess I just explained a little bit of it. If you hadn't heard that before when I mentioned it, you'd think, oh, good for you, we made a lawsuit, we sued the political party, isn't that novel, or whatever you thought, or what a jerk, what a waste, whatever you thought. In law, we just proved that the political parties are subverters of the Republican form of representative government, and they're only a legal entity. For all y'all that support the failure, support the notion that corporations ought not be running your life and making policy over your life like the UN, all the legal entities, these fictional things, then you can't also be a part of the parties. They're just legal entities. They have members, and once you're a member, or you even capitulate to what they're doing, you even agree and acknowledge them, you've agreed with a felon. You become the accessory, at least, to the crime against you. So Israel's furious at the UN, all at the same time that Putin's going to be doing this dollar thing, and we still see the refugee coming in, the little baby, and sad as it is, I didn't like it. I saw that picture once. I'm not going to look at it again. I'm not going to look at anything about it. I know. I've been talking about it for years, what I don't have the word, how, it's just evil in the world is. That everybody focuses on that and not all the rest of it, really just, I'm just dumbfounded. At the same time, if that picture finally gets people fired up and no one looked at the thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of everybody else that died because of the entanglements that the Zio West does in the world, and this is not to exclude anything that Russia or China may ever do. This is not that at all. We could understand the atrocity that government ends up being when you don't hold it to a specific form. That Israel's furious at UN report detailing torture and Palestinian children came right before this Syrian baby washed ashore because of the refugees and the stupidity behind that. These are the same people working. If you can't see the insanity, the lack of reason behind this stuff, and know that that's not coming from the same evil, you're not really paying attention. If you want to stop the refugees, stop bombing their homeland. I thought it was a 7 to 10 year old boy video I saw. He said it. I didn't have to say more. I was speechless because he said it. Stop bombing my homeland so I can go back. Stop attacking us so we can go back home. So if you want to stop the refugees, you want to stop a 30-year-old baby from washing ashore, you got to stop bombing people, attacking them, setting up these things, and then denying and having Israel be furious, something it can't do. It's a legal entity. It has no emotional capacity whatsoever, that a UN report detailing tortured Palestinian children made the public notice. And yet what happened? Where was the outcry on that? And I'm not focusing on Israel. Every nation does this. Where is the people's outcry? But it all comes together, and it's showing us a theme, as if you can keep up with these little dots. That to me, it's just so clear, and why my frustration with the crickets. The lack of substantive response. I don't know how many people are going to tweet the picture of that little baby. And you know, that's about where it's going to end for most people, except you'll carry this thing in you that was just and you'll want to talk about it. But that's it. No action will be taken anywhere to stop that from happening. The same thing that all these atrocities get by with. We get the notice in all this media. You know, the other thing, the double-edged sword. The internet's a wonderful thing, but it'll give you the notice as easily as any newspaper did, and the powers that are sitting there to beat you down say, "See, we told you," and you sat there, and that gave us the license. You gave me the license to beat you down some more. That in the same week as we hear that. The drumming of the Russians doing something. In fact, they've always been doing that. And the interesting move that Russia says, we're not going to do it, we don't have a need to do any more, should tell you this. He's in trouble, but I mean, there's a little more stability in Syria with respect to the war against Syria than it may seem on the surface, notwithstanding me not knowing what diabolical nature is going on against Syria behind the scenes, when you see Putin actually facilitating regional financial markets. Then we hear another story pop up. It says Turkey extends mandate for military ops in Iraq and Syria. Now, I saw that, and I said, and I got this from someone I follow on Twitter who is like the source of my Eastern, Middle East, and Eastern European news. It's someone who speaks many languages and kind of cuts through all this and sends this. I mean, it's a fire hose to get on her stream. But wow, I see a whole different set of news coming out with a different reflection of what it means. And again, I don't necessarily agree with the position that she takes on some, but for the most part, she certainly is more objective basis than what we're getting out. That she sent a couple of links through, and I took note of one, and then from one of those links I went and found another one. It was this one. Turkey extends mandate to military ops in Iraq and Syria. I had to respond, and no one answered. In Twitter, I don't expect my answer, and I'm actually not wondering. I'm wondering what the really purpose of all that is. However, what about that mandate is not a declaration of war on Syria that we were silent on that too? What authority does this Turkey have to extend a mandate of military ops without it being a war declared on both Iraq and Syria? That you see the bigger play going on in all this. That nobody questions this is really just a fascination to me. It just kind of goes by. No one really makes a comment on it. I'm not going to read the story. There's so much to have to go through today, but in fact, I'm already beyond where I was supposed to be and still not up to it. But Britain and France now, now the story comes out. It's more acknowledged that the Zio West is now speaking about what the real plan is about all this. It's not about Russia being there. These people are kind of outing a condition to plant a seed to see how it's going to fly as Britain and France plot airstrikes against ISIS. It's us, folks. Is U.S. They don't make a distinction. El Nusra Front, all those, they're us, the United States. They're Zio West. They're pawns. They're not even there, I don't think, at some level. But this is what we get bought into, that they're going to go cause airstrikes on ISIS in Syria as European migrant crisis grows. Stop bombing Syria. So the answer to stop the refugees from coming to Britain is to go bomb the Syrian people more. And when you see this glitch in the matrix, you know it's them, folks. It's them. The ubiquitous them that controls this evil, that is in control, that advances this evil on us. And I hear crickets. on these points. I see no actual responsive engagement on these things en masse. In the same week, we hear another thing that becomes nothing, no statement. And this is the link I did get from the Twitter account I followed that presents a lot of this. Again, like I said, it's a fire hose. I can't even keep up. I haven't figured out how to move it over so I don't have to see it in my thing. There's just so much that comes out of this feed from her. It's just fat. It blows me away what's out in the world to actually have to keep up with. But sent that's us, folks. Is U.S. LCIA, duh, is us. Carries out chemical attacks in Iraq and Syria. The same place France and Britain are plotting to attack Syria. Remember, the SAS forces went into Libya right before. I caught that in the news, and then in Iraq, and they did all the SAS is that special forces group that goes in ahead, and they do this. They do the reconnaissance and the targeting and all that kind of thing. They're in there. We got the report that the SAS was is in uniform. You know, they were all their black flag and everything else, like raid. Is carries out chemical attacks in Iraq and Syria, and you don't hear anything much about this. So there's a war in Syria if you didn't know it. And we, Americans, so-called, are quiet against the atrocity, and we will get all up in emotion about seeing a 3-year-old boy being washed ashore because he's a refugee and couldn't get to shore. We focused on the wrong thing. We don't care either about all the other little boys and girls that died while Israel bombed the heck out of Gaza. We don't hear anything about all the people that are dying. The hundreds of thousands of people died at the instance of the United States of America, Britain, France, EU, and Israel. Over no thing, actually. I hear crickets. I hear the war against the people. But I hear crickets despite that noise. You know, I don't know, a real cricket, as soon as he heard the bomb, he'd even shut up. I mean, he'd be like, what's that? I don't know, what was that? I got to hunker down here. What I see is the people, they're crickets, they continue to be crickets. They don't even care that they're now exposed, that there's a bigger danger around them that they don't care about. They just keep rubbing their little feet. Societally, that's our demise. And when I just say that, I've got no energy in me left to even fight that, because I think that's where we're going. I see so many people will talk about all this stuff, but they don't have an action plan working. They don't have an engagement working. They just have a typewriter and a keyboard, some pictures they move around, and they think they've done something. Well, awareness is important, but we have to back it up with some tangible action. You got to go somewhere with your knowledge. And I've been attempting to try and explain behind Woodshed how we've done it and how we do it, what works, what to watch out for, how to watch out for those people that'll come and snatch victory from your hands because you didn't know they were there, how to protect from that. I try to do that behind Woodshed to give you. Hopefully I'm speaking to people that really care enough to take the action, because I already know it's not my decision. If we don't. This war against other people is here in the United States of America. We have Battlefield America, and I don't think people have taken that serious. We have someone coming from internationally. It's coming to the United States at the end of this month to speak to the so-called leaders. You know, they're not representatives if they're leaders. They're leaders that hold a lure that entice the groupers, the fish, from the schools to bite on the bait that they've given you. That's what leaders are. And the one remember, they're just the leaders, so there's somebody holding the fishing pole. The fisher of men, folks. Soylent Green is people. are you pulling the stuff together? How integrated this attack is, and that's another point. Integration. The system is one of integration. No one left behind as they drive everybody down into a slavery condition, a poverty. They say they're protecting against poverty, but they don't really. They're going to change the word on you when they get you down to the nothing. They talk about austerity. That's poverty. But that's that same system saying they're securing from poverty. This is, again, the glitch in the Matrix. I'm referring to the Matrix movie where they have the glitch where the kitty, the little black kitty, kind of makes two passes by the passageway and someone identifies it. The Matrix is not a movie. So pay special attention. That's happening to us all the time, that little glitch. And we remain oblivious, essentially, to some of these. So there's this war on people, and the war comes in many ways, and we're talking about it. It's kind of it's a nonsense statement to be almost repeat. It's almost I get to the point where I'm wondering if I'm going insane because I repeat it and I don't see any response, so I repeat it again, thinking I'm going to get a different response. Now, that's not absolute, and we are getting more people that are at least rising up and making statements, and we're getting more people integrated. They're engaging this system that's against them. They're finding out that the system doesn't represent them at all, and never did. And so but there's not very, very, very few people after that can offer any more suggestions on how to go on. I hope I've been one of those voices in the place that I've looked, and I say we, those of us that now, as I move with people that see we work together now to expose even more. We're deconstructing that infrastructure that they say they're building when they leverage your work out of taxes or fees or conditions and fines to pay for that plunder against you to make it more, that allows this system of corporation, the regional corporation, the nation-state corporation. Remember, it's not a state. These are nations that have been brought into a state. They reduce everything to something that isn't, and that's the fiction, to control you, to allow them the authority to do regulations. And when you got the corporations whose bottom line is the bottom line, and I'm telling you that the global order is an economic order, I'm telling you the whole thing is just one big corporation at some point. It's not legitimate government as by the people. As I would conceive, I understand, as it was exampled for me better than what I see in the world, the mining districts. Those are a bunch of property owners that came together to protect themselves. They established their own government. If you look at that in some context, that's a county. Well, in fact, the mining districts in the West did start the county. They were before the counties, a lot of them. And so I have a glimpse of what quality, a better government is than the example that we see out in the world working, or even the one that's been adulterated. The focus is, that's why I tell you, I see a purpose for a government. But it's one that all the people involved in it are an active part of. And that's, I think, the ultimate failure. Because when we didn't become active, we've allowed this administrative policing policy to come on us, and we've allowed their system, the system of the bar that had been planned to put in place to make the decisions, to allow their system authority, that allowed more of this administrative enforcement, to allow more rules, to allow more plunder for the bottom line, which doesn't care whether or not you are going to be affected. In fact, if they adversely affect you, they can make a new industry to take care of that, and they don't care, they just care for it. They care for their interest, not your interest. So that's why you never hear the letter U put in the word care. You never have these things cured, you just have care. Now you may care, but they care only for their bottom line. As we move on in this global order and multinationalistic thing that goes on and is absolutely advanced by trade markets, that trade agreements, Glyphosate causes cancer. EPA trade secret sealed files revealed cancer link known back in the 1970s. So we see this thing that's developed itself as government, not the government, as government, has allowed itself to look at the bottom line and can give it itself license in Title 50 to do anything it needs to advance this plunder against you. That we move into corporations that will poison, have evidence of poison, the government who's supposed to sit there to protect you, of which is not there to protect you, but to cover as a trade secret, a commerce secret, for the advancement of the profits of a corporation, that it can do harm to you, and nobody knows it since at least the 70s. That we have the dual problem on this multinational global interference with people. That's the chemical side. That I told you, they'll use these things on whatever end to do it. If they can cause a harm, they can create a medical system to care for you. Not cure you, but care for you. Oh, don't stop the bombing. Let's just bomb them more to stop our refugee problem. Oh, let's not stop using glyphosate that causes cancer. Let's just use more of it, and maybe we can cause a new industry to care for you. So they don't care. And you see how when legal fiction gets involved, the words don't mean anything, actually. Well, you see around the like natural, you want to eat natural food? What an abuse has gone in that. And yet we get the evidence that people are there to try and help us understand, and despite the evidence, the notice to us, that there's these things in the notice, this news, these things we get off the internet, the things we can tape off the television, that are some proofs that we should have in our bag of proofs to go to people locally that are making the decisions, even contrary to their duty and obligation, which you should know, and so you can explain it to them because they don't know. Some do know. Some that you know are advancing the ideological agenda. They know they're only putting policy and not law forward. And that is a breach, so you can call their attention to it. As an education process, there's no confrontation other than they get called out at some point for being willful in that, and now you've got them in a position of liability. It takes a little while. You have to give them some time. But it's pretty quick as well. That we have the facts we can bring forward. And do I care that this woman says anything? Not really. Do I believe that as a doctor she's a proof where she speaks out about genetically modified organisms? Not actually. But this story may be something that someone who is impressed by her, who thinks that she speaks in some kind of authoritative sense, would be something you've thrown and say, hey, even Jane Goodall says that GMO foods cause animals to suffer. Now, what's the other side of that? See, Monsanto is a chemical company. They created biology that allows them to make chemicals, and so they created these organisms that were never really tested quite right and have problems. Fascinating. What are the so-called scientists that are genetic scientists? Their excuses for allowing genetically modified foods, and they won't answer the simplest question about the unintended protein consequences. It just blows me away that they keep doing this stuff. But notwithstanding all that Jane Goodall, the woman of the apes here, folks. She says that animals tell us something about GMOs. She wants to give us some information. So here's what do I care about her? No, she's not in that system. She took care of animals. She's a good woman at that point. She wanted to understand an animal. She dedicated her life. I don't think she's ever done any harm to anybody. She realized that there's these studies out there that are showing that harm comes. I would have rather seen her talk about, and she didn't have this until just recently, feeding her gorillas the GM bananas and finding out that their hair falls out and they get tumors that they didn't have before. Now, Monsanto to jump all over her about how that test didn't work, but the point is we have the evidence. The point is that somebody of notoriety, a British anthropologist named Jane Goodall, who spent decades observing the behavior of primates, you little monkey animals, in their natural habitats. Habitats is what they're setting up, human habitats, folks. All these people are together. But she comes out and says that she's confronting the national press
who could care less, with her insights into genetic modified food and its effect on animals as well as human beings, not people. But here we have it. She's acknowledging that these feeds, as I call them, it's not food, it's feed. It's feed the human animal. And she's a primary primate studier that says that this stuff is hurting you. And so if you had another contrary thought, or you find people that have contrary thoughts, they probably would appreciate to know that she says that they're no good. Why? Because I'm trying to get as many people to understand the tools they have to try to give pieces of information to people that the people will accept. In other words, it's not coming from you, and that gets around the fact that maybe they don't agree with your position. So it's not my position. I just found this. What did you think about it? Genetic Goodall says animals suffer from genetically modified food, and here's what she says. And you just hand them the little report. Why is that problem? Because if you don't have your health, folks, is what there'd be. Then if you don't have your health, you get to be cared for by the system. And remember, corporations are people too, and so the people care for the humans. And the humans are only subject and have the ability to claim human rights. And when you go read the Human Rights Declaration at the UN, you're going to find about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through that those rights are subject to the needs and the necessities of the state. And so when you hear a passage that says that these people, whether they be enforcers, or some leader or some representative that's going to follow the human rights, give import to the human rights, what are they saying? They're saying that those officials are going to give import to the necessities of the state. And you thought you had human rights because you didn't read the little passage that says you don't have any beyond what the state needs. It says it right in there. So you get underneath that condition and that statement, you're going to have no action plan that you can do. If you don't, as I say, get situationally aware and do in evolution, design your engagement, evolve your engagement, evolutionary engagement. It's soon coming to the time you will have not either to do. It'll be taken from you. What am I talking about? How to address these corporations who profess good under the cover of a corporation called government, now, not the people, not representing the people, but driven by a usurper that our default judgment. They didn't even come to answer the charge that they were essentially committing treason. They make war on the laws of the United States, the Bar Association. The political parties, the Democrat and the Republican. That these people will make war on the United States, and they're taking away your ability to defend yourself right in front of your eyes. That these little stories of what can we do? Well, here's a county. It's going to come out. Oregon County set to destroy Monsanto's GMO crops following a ban instituted in 2014. So the time is run over the window of them cleaning up their fields, and now it's coming out that Monsanto has been warned, and Syngenta already moved their operations outside that county. Notice was given by Josephine County, Oregon, that citizens were very serious about GMO Measure 1758 that was passed last year. The cultivation of GMO crops will not be tolerated. This is say no to GMO. Don't label it, just say no. No mo GMO. And this is now they have to move. Now, the Bar Association, in support of these people, and the industry's attorneys, again, have gone into the states to try and stop, and made a stop, that most people can't do this. If you thought what I just said about your remedies are being taken away from you as we sit here is a joke, this county is one of the few that got their resolution in time to be able to have the people vote to stop this and end the cultivation of GMOs. That's now taken away from them. That's your future. It may be already in your place. You do not have this right. Now, is that set in stone? Well, I found out even permanent laws can be supplanted, and I got that out of the Bar Association maneuver in 1953. So no, nothing's permanent. And the people need to rise up. But here, you want to stop these people that are given license by a government that turned into some kind of oppressor and opportunist and looking for trade markets and economic advantage over people. Here's how you can still do it. Evidence, folks, is all I'm bringing you. Long exposure to tiny amounts of Monsanto's Roundup may damage liver, kidney, a study says. More evidence. I got so much to read here, I don't want to read it. It's over and over. Why is this stuff still a problem? Why do we even entertain that we're going to allow two countries to go bomb a third country to stop the refugee problem started by bombing that country in the first place? Why do we tolerate the poisons that are come on by labeling the poisons instead of just saying, we're not going to tolerate this nonsense? And as I said before, you want to apply the new system. The new system says that in nature and environment, there's a precautionary principle. I agree with that at this level. Let's take that precautionary principle and apply it to corporations again. They must come and serve people, not themselves or the state. We, the people, have not been vigilant to make sure that didn't happen. We have engaged the political parties as legal entities to plunder and take over our action in favor of a membership in a union for political destruction that have allowed these kind of war against us. And we sit back. It's really on one level, I have to laugh. I've got to sit in the sun and just laugh at all these fools out in the world. On the other hand, I'm one of those fools, and they're trying to poison me. And they're setting up systems of color of authority, that move against you, which is you can probably find in every state. I found it in a couple of states. It's called theft by extortion. Theft by your rights and property and remedies under color of authority is a felony. Why don't we have more people at least facing prosecution? Well, we'll look at the system of people we sued, and I'll tell you why. And we didn't stop it as a people. That we get now. You think you're going to? Not only did one county stop GMOs to show you ban the dang things, don't label them, and it happened, and that door has been closed since then. As I told you, they'll take it away. There's the evidence of it. You're coming to a time when you will not be capable of even caring you won't listen to me. You wouldn't listen to anybody like me. You'll be drooling on yourself. Under the color of this other thing, one of the legs of the stool for the proposition of the United States Program of Action for the 21st Century. And I'm reminded when I say that to go listen to William Roberts, go through all that documentation he did, read right out of the encyclopedias, give you all the background on how this stuff develops. As I told you, he went through the books that way. I went through international law. We came to the same stinking abyss, looked in and said, it's a stinking abyss. I don't want to go in there, and I don't like the people. I don't want to see people go in there. And we committed to tell you all what we found in the way we found it, that one of the legs of this agenda is Program of Action, which is sustainable development. It's the action plan for implementing sustainable development. And the sustainable development is the development of the state, the system that's going to keep you oppressed. Without an actual government and governance underneath these legal entities that co-opted your action, your engagement, and you let it. But that I see again, John Rappaport talking to us, for those of us that want to hear it and listen, how they're taking away your ability. You're not going to have the capacity. You'll be drooling on yourself. And that's going to be okay. The psychiatrists are drugging children for social justice. It's in quotes. That quote relates to sustainable development or the program of action to bring social justice, which is really essentially the plunder upon you to make you equal and bring up anybody else who feels they've been violated without any regard to what right there might be, what property right there might be, or that you yourself who have now been reversely offended even have a point. In other words, whoever speaks up with their offense, the whiners win, folks. works. It's pretty much how this works. The bombshell mind control engineering, drugging children for social justice should catch your attention. John should have your attention here to read his article. You'll get the link on the Blogcaster page. It's the latest thing psychiatrists are giving. Psychiatry is an invented, I don't even want to use the word. I don't want to use any of the words I was just thinking trying to describe it. It's none of the actual things you think. It's a fraud. It's a crime on the people, psychiatry. It is the epitome of made up, if I could say it that way, without having any more thoughts about it. I really have no more thoughts about it. It's just an abomination on people. That it is now going after so-called children, these wards of the state, because you didn't understand to say, well, no, that's my property. It was made by me, of me. It's my son and my daughter, and you can't have it. Or, okay, I'm not going to engage your system and apply for your marriage license, which brings me into legal entity status as the third party of which is the state as the real party of interest to the product of the partnership, which is your little ones. They call them children, wards of the state, and you become the parental or guardian unit over the ward of the state. You can identify them that way. You can enter them into the fiction, or you can identify where the fiction is and stay out as best you can. And at that point, when you can't, then you realize that they're the aggressor. It's a little bit easier to deal with them that way then. In the latest of things, psychiatrists are giving children in poor neighborhoods Adderall, a dangerous stimulant, by making false diagnoses of ADHD and no diagnosis at all. Their aim to promote social justice, to improve academic performance in school. Well, the academic performance is the Common Core standards, which is really no standard whatsoever, except to be the unit that they expect you to be, the human, the capital resource animal that they need you to be. So here it is to, quote, promote social justice. That term comes directly out of an international agenda. If you didn't think that this tool called psychiatry isn't a weapon against people and against you right now. And so we talk about this social justice and equal justice and all this, and you see as it becomes more, the teeth come and the reflexive, I can't even say law, the reflexive policy that the so-called courts are now coming out with, that don't actually give you the law, that give you lip service to the law. You get to these points where anybody who can identify them as separate, as a class in a classless system, will get favor from a reflexive system. You know you have no justice. Social justice is not justice. It's some form of a thing that someone decides they put the term of justice on. And it has no basis. There's no foundation to it. This story came up. You can be a tomato if you want. Just don't force me to call you a tomato. And now we start seeing a line being drawn. And this is an interesting discussion about this PC language, how that's now infiltrated our thoughts, our minds, our actions, our inaction. The commands are inaction in lots of times. The new PC language requirements on some college campuses and elsewhere requires others to accept and to become a part of the ideological and even delusional construct. It changes how we are allowed to think about things. It's not freedom. Well, I think it is a freedom. It's not being free, and it's not free will. And so this is where we have a little bit of problem that I would read through this. I do want to call your attention to these discrepancies because I think they're monstrous in your understanding and awareness. Having freedom is not being free. As I say, just take the more of a physics definition. It's the range of movement within an infrastructure or framework. And if your infrastructure or framework happens to be the imposition of social justice, your freedom is as long as you're compliant to that. You're not free, are you? So freedom is not being free. And I want you to see that. It's not freedom, although this statement is kind of lacking there. Let's go with the idea that they think it's being free. It's not freedom, it's enslavement. Well, that's what I just said. Freedom is enslavement. It's just the frame that you're constrained by. And we would want, those of us that want to be more free, want to have the frame that we're constrained to be as, I can say, natural as possible, not constructed by other men and women to some facade, charade, ideological idea. And they say leftist ideology. It could be. It doesn't have a direction. It's just a falsehood that they get you to engage, and then they take your engagement as your consent. See, they don't get your consent. They've figured out a way. They're not after your consent. All they can get you to do is engage or remain silent that when they said you engaged, and they make the record they got your consent. That's consensus. There's nothing truth in that. And when you step up to fight that, that's when the game starts. That's when you begin to start to see the felon, and that's when you can engage this thing and really begin to stop it. It's not freedom, it's enslavement, a leftist ideology, and falsehood. Freedom of speech is the cornerstone of freedom, and the political correctness is a direct threat to it. You can call yourself a tomato for all I care. Just don't expect me to call you a tomato, though I will always be nice to people who think they are tomatoes. At the University of Tennessee, students and professors are advised to change their pronoun usage for any person who doesn't identify as male or female. These are people who are not undergoing sex reassignment surgery. These are people who are not undergoing sex reassignment surgery. It's akin to the idea that Sean King and Rachel Dolezal can be black if they wake up one day and say they are. I didn't want to. I can interrupt too much on this, but this is the whole point. There's no foundation, isn't it? If you look at these things, you'll find that there is no foundation to what goes on in the decision making. And then you turn it into somebody else that's going to make that decision who is in the ideology. You can see for yourself that's not going to be a very good outcome if you're one who has principles and a foundation. Again, that you don't have to impose that on anybody, but your principles will not be regarded in favor of the one without. Well, American Heritage defines political correctness as, quote, showing an effort to make broad social and political changes to redress injustices caused by prejudice. It often involves changing or avoiding language that might offend anyone, especially with respect to gender, race, or ethnic background. Who decides what is an injustice or an offense? Does one's perceived injustice trump another's right to free speech and to express the truth? Politically correct speech being forced on people endangers the right of free speech by distorting the truth. It makes telling the truth punishable. It also changes the meanings of things. For example, card check, in the PC term for a union rule that would require people to give up their American right to secret ballot in voting for or against unionization. Using the term sexual assault in lieu of rape is unclear and actually minimizes the crime. For some, it's not PC to fly the American flag or say America is the land of the opportunity, and for others, being referred to as male or female is rude. Where does it end, and how will we ever make that the truth? The University of Tennessee's Office of Diversity and Inclusion, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion Pride Center Director. All these concepts are capital letter. Diversity, inclusion, and pride are all part of the social justice agenda that's foreign to the American way, that's being used in academia. It's the same people academia sets up the urban-rural divide and the one Oregon, the one Idaho, the one California, the one nonsense, removing the actual form establishment of representative government in favor of a separate jurisdiction where it is at war with each other, the urban and rural, which the rural shall serve the city-state urbanites. This is the future in academia as they sit in their high towers and will talk down to you about it. This is the same language they're talking about to bring about from academia those things that your sons and daughters are being taught right now. So the future looks bleak for those of us that look and see that they're being literally brainwashed into accepting forced into actually acting through and acting out an ideology, which causes the confusion, which actually fortifies and fuels the need for more non-foundational words and embarrassments and perceived pseudo insults. In other words, they're self-inflicted, as I've told you, and they're not actual. These are all in the perception. There's no foundation to any of this. The University of Office of Diversity and Inclusion prides. See, they're not going to include you. If you have any principles, you're not going to be included. You're not going to be at the center. Diversity is no such thing when it's fulfilled. It's a monoculture, isn't it? There is no diversity when everything is diverse under one rule. And so these are all the glitches in the matrix that should cause you pause at least, and I hope more, because these are literal action-taking threats against you right now, today, that become ridiculous, and that at some point we need to make ridiculous to show how ridiculous that they are, and actually how anti-independent and anti-diverse they really are. This director, Donna Brokaw, wrote in a column that students and professors should ask each other what pronouns they use. Students who do not think they are men or women might want to be called gender-neutral pronouns like Z, hers with an IR, S, her, HIR, and Z with an XE, them, and zir. Z, here, he, her, Z, them, and zir. These are gender-neutral pronouns that they claim can be used. These may sound a little funny at first, but only because they are new. Brake wrote, the more we make sharing of pronouns a universal practice, the more inclusive we will be as a campus. So the more communistic you get in how you respond as one hive mind and one hive voice, the more inclusive the campus becomes. Move that to your county, and then move that to your state, and move that to your nation, and move that to the world. One hive mind speaking under neutrality makes inclusiveness. It doesn't make independence, it doesn't make wealth, it doesn't make being free, it doesn't make independent thought, it doesn't make any of that, but they're not worried about that when they come to terms. If you didn't think words are important here in how they're driving our mind, the psyop this is creating, you're underappreciating this aspect that they're already working with. This is actually coming out right now as policy. We should not assume someone's gender by their appearance, nor by what is listed in a roster or student information system, wrote Donna Brokaw. Now, here's the point. So how do you identify this if that's important? If it matters, and it matters at some point. Let me go back now. So there's this supposed neutral. You're supposed to use these Z, here, hers, Z, them, and zir. And you know, this is just about someone's identity, what they think about themselves. And I want to go back and remind you, they said this is no, and I don't agree with this line, but this is the line they made. There's no, one of the definitions was no one was undergoing a sex reassignment surgery. In other words, they were biologically what they are, despite what they identify. And I was reading this, and I'm going to Z, Zi, Zer, Zu, Zi. And I said, well, wait a minute. If someone doesn't understand what they are, and they aren't, and they got all the physical attributes of one or the other, and we're not supposed to be able to identify them is either and find out which of the 5 or 6 words is politically correct, aren't they really, instead of all that, if they don't know what they are and we can't identify it without an insult to them, isn't the word it a lot better? Doesn't that make it much more simple? If you don't understand, you can't be insulted if you don't understand what kind of a being you are, and you don't understand that your identity, your thought of your identity is irrelevant, but that we've all agreed that it's an insult if we call you any gender, aren't you just an it? And then let's advance this onto everybody. Z's, I's, Z's, whatever they want to call this. I'm just going to add that because it's academically important, apparently, to put Z in front of something. Aren't you all just a bunch of zits? Isn't that what we should just call ourselves? Let's forget gender. Let's make it gender neutral. They just can't call you a person. See, that'd be nonsense. That's what the law did. They called everybody a person. Well, you're just an it. You don't understand. Apparently, your feelings are more important than reality. There's an insult to actually recognize reality and say, you've got a problem. You've been abused and we need to help you fix that. But it's not an insult to call you who you really are. That we're just a bunch of its, and to make it academically receptive, we're just a bunch of zits, I think is really more the answer, and then we can move on. Individual animals, again, get a crime victims list in Oregon. They'd fit too, folks. Zits. We're all a bunch of zits. We all have rights. Oregon is, again, here, we've got one county in Oregon going to stop the GMO insanity, and then Oregon comes up. Again, this is the pioneer police state, Oregon is. And again, come up with this idea that the first state where prosecutors may count each abused animal as a crime victim. The state did so once before and then took it back, but now it is has reinstated the court precedent to let animals count as individuals under state law. But folks, aren't they already? Animals are individuals. They use the word individual in the statement of an it, a legal entity. So that we don't insult the its, we have to put the Z so that we got both. The he and the she's it. We got zits. Here we have it. Oregon's already ahead of the curve. They're going to give all zits crime victim rights. This has got to be also, there's also a crime victim fund, so somehow the state's going to take money on the backside of this. But this is the nonsense coming down in this reflexive response to inanimate objects as having property rights and power to determine the future contrary to reality. Now, I won't go through the rest of the story. You can get the link, but this was a case that came down before. The Supreme Court made a decision that animals did have rights, but then they rescinded it because it wasn't supposed to go before the Supreme Court. They found an error, so they vacating that order. But that order that was vacated, the reasoning in it is being used and reapplied. These people are so ingrained. The Bar Association is so affirmed, and I'll get to that documentation here at some point. I really will. Have confirmed the application of sustainable development that this Oregon Appeal Court is going to use the reasoning in a vacated order to advance this ZIT condition. All zits have rights. And animals are individuals. Individuals are animals. And I've just called you a human again, and I hear crickets. This is how the system of corporate response and reflection considers you. It's all coming. There is no identity. It's not just neutral, gender neutral. If the legal was actually gender neutral, this would not be an issue. They're making an issue. That means that it is coming from a foreign source. Start getting wrap your head around this conundrum. If law is only looks at everything neutral anyway, what's this ability now, this jurisdiction, this authority to look at gender non-neutrality? And that someone can use gender in order to be different, in order to gain rights. That is enforced by the state. If you haven't figured this glitch in the matrix out yet, that it exists, and it really is this glitch that doesn't exist, that we're entertaining, we really are an insane world, an insane group of people. It kind of goes in, what do we do? I mean, this is just a bunch of experts wanting to move what they are into, their special interest, along. And for the Bar Association and the legal parties, this special interest is a foreign interest. And I can identify it as the sustainable under the term of sustainable development, which was actually a cover word. It's the actual thing they're doing, but it was covering the agenda tool, which was Agenda 21, which utilizes all this stuff. that these experts come out and they'll dictate your life on theories that are untested because just cause, folks. As I said, it's just cause. No just cause anymore. It's just cause. And then, so we've talked about this before in science. All this stuff that the corporations use, best sciences, that's another tool underneath this agenda, this sustainable development. Best sciences. And so the best sciences you get is a fraud. And then you find out they make this stuff up in the science, so-called. Even if they're trying to do it right. But what you do is it's an adjustment. They're finding out people are catching up. They do the monitoring. They collect the data for the monitoring. That the monitoring and the evaluation of the data of which they use to adapt as they move this thing incrementally along to keep it transparent to you. That we just come out with another one of these science-based, these best sciences, and we find out sciences is kind of messed up. That quantum spookiness passes toughest test yet. It's a bad day for both Albert Einstein and for hackers. The most rigorous tests of quantum theory ever carried out has confirmed that the spooky action at a distance that German physicists famously hated, in which manipulating one object instantaneously seems to affect another far away from one, is inherent part of the quantum world. Well, quantumness has been fabricated itself because it's a bunch of people who thought they knew what was going on and all their stuff didn't add up, so they made something else up. And then they do the test that proves that what they didn't understand is exactly what they didn't understand, and they still don't understand it. And we go, pay you more money. Make more rules under science that we live by, that this agenda uses. The experiment performed in the Netherlands, boy, isn't that an interesting place to come up with from this agenda as well, could be the final nail in the coffin for models of the atomic world that are more intuitive than standard quantum mechanics, as some physicists say. It could also enable quantum engineers to develop a new suite of ultra-secure cryptographic devices. Let me go back to the point of what I just said if we just missed it. The final nail in the coffin for models of the atomic world that are more intuitive. Folks, they just admitted that the whole of the physics didn't understand physics. It's just a made-up thing. From a fundamental point of view, this is truly history making. I told you, when someone says it's making history, pay attention. They've supposedly made a test to throw down all of what we understood our physical reality is. And yet they continue to say they have the knowledge that they have now re-seen how to better define it. My question to you is then, how is the IPCC and the UN using best sciences at all? The fabric of reality has been rent, folks. I keep telling you this. They keep making it up. We keep understanding. Our questions make more questions. And sometimes we get some answers. And there's a physics that goes on. We're kind of good little monkeys that way. We respond to the wind in our face. When it gets too much, we put a shield over it. And then we go to calculating with our little sticks to figure out, well, what was that stuff I had to put a shield up in front of my face to stop? Oh, and that water. What the heck was that? And we define this reality. We don't have a clue about it. And we define it the way everybody would in consensus agree. Well, consensus is a felony. It doesn't actually respond to the people that have the actual property or have the actual reality that you're interfering with. And then you're taking that and interfering with other people with it. That's another felony. And then you omitted to tell anybody you were doing it that way. That's yet another felony in the same violation. Very fascinating what theft by extortion under color of authority is. And I hear crickets to the condemnation and at least getting it before the consciousness of the people to say this stuff is nonsense. Well, here it is, another report. They admit that physics, that the rules of physics didn't understand. And so they're going to write some new ones based on this test that isn't yet proven. As we come to terms with the fact that the terms have been made up and they've been given license by government to act as a license to be truth, and in fact they're not. Licenses by government are the force, the violence against which you respond will be brought against you is the same violence that will be brought against you when you say the licensee of the certificate that you gave that said that guy was an expert who claimed to know what he knew was right and becomes a fraud you can't challenge. And so the only thing we get to do is to call it out and not engage it, not allow it to engage. And there's tools that I've talked about behind the woodshed that allow us to do that. We're looking at a moment. This is, like I said, a very interesting moment in history. I'd like to have it different. I'd like to have it more about what my utopia of the world, I think everybody has the rainbows and the unicorns and the fairies and the fairy dust in their mind. I'd certainly like to see it a lot better. I certainly would rather not see a 3-year-old boy face down in the surf. But that's not the reality. It's not my doing necessarily, but that's not reality. And so we have to look at that. That I told you, like when Obama came in, this abomination, literally, abomination. He was symbolically a very detrimental thing. I told you he would declare the second Civil War on the United States. He would be the president that brought it on. We now have Battlefield America. People don't understand it. I then told you about the this. It started out as the shooting in North Carolina with the church, and that they went immediately, not after the problem of the SSRIs and the kid and the potential of the government involving themselves with that. They went after the gun control, which is another spacious idea, but more important to the point, they went after the symbol of independence in this country that fought against centralized power, which is the UN as well, when they went after the South. Oh, the night Dixie went down or something? That flag became a symbol. It was just on the back of a car, but it became the action force for people to get rid of an example of independence. I'm not certifying the totality of the rightness of that group of people to do certain ideas. What I'm saying is that they had an action that says, no, we're independent of a central authority, and that central authority has no real power, and they went to stop the oppressor, and they failed. The evidence of which is lasted in the American flag, the Confederate flag, and a lot of other things. And I said, they're going to go through now and destroy, now that this war is on, they're going to get rid of every evidence so that nobody ever believes that you can rise up against central authority and ever win, even through history. I found this next story very interesting, because not only did the flag a symbol, there's culture behind this. I'm not making a decision on any of it. I don't really have an explanation. I've heard of it. I don't have any thought about it. Never been involved with it, so I wouldn't know anything more about it. But it's a group of people, and a culture, a tradition that people believe in and continue to live. This is not conducive to diversity and integration. It's the idea of the Southern Belle. The Southern Belle is now under attack. Probably defeated by now. This article's been written about 2 or 3 weeks ago. How fast this was. You know how fast the flag went. The Confederate flag disappeared. Even Jefferson Davis got removed. The statues are being taken out. The Southern Belle now, the tradition of the South, the woman of the South, and all that lifestyle and tradition and culture is now considered a racist and has to go. If you didn't think there was a deeper plan, who would have even thought, folks? Okay, the flag maybe, it was right there in front. But going after this private symbol to show you how actually important these traditions and customs are to those that are trying to change yours. They have to eliminate all evidence of anything that's not what they believe. They don't believe in diversity. They only believe in what they believe. And they'll attack this symbol. And there's people that are in this institution, I guess. I don't even know what it is to say. It's what happens in the South around the women. If you rose into that, I suppose. In the Washington Post, there was a 2-minute hate against the Southern Belle, which is now said to be a symbol of feminine white privilege and institutional racism in the South, and which must be eradicated from Southern college campuses in a new social justice crusade. That's all I should have to say. Social justice is this insanity that is a central imposition that claims to be inclusive when in fact it isn't. It will take and claim, point and blame anything it wants on anyone, and underneath this banner of a foreign oppression, people rally up and defeat those that are the example of any kind of distinction. Whether you think the Southern Belle was a symbol of white feminine white privilege or not, I don't know. That's another meme that's a falsity, this white privilege idea. But they targeted the Southern white privilege as well, which I told you was the civil war against the people. The evidences of the people can be independent. This is what's being vanquished from your reality at this point, on something that has no reality. With policies that use, they say, best sciences, there was no best sciences to come after this. They just attacked it. They attacked it as a racism underneath a banner of diversity, which itself is a problem. Again, the glitch in that matrix. I keep telling you, the matrix is not a movie. The glitch sits there to tell us there's a problem. We're not in a place that is reality for us. It's actually an altered state. Altered state. That's what regional governance is. An altered state. We're talking about using terms and freedom of speech, and you can't use yours, they can use yours against you. I try to look at this and say, well, if you go to a funny gender neutral dialogue, why don't we limit it all? If they're not sexual, if there's no sexual surgery orientation changing, then they're just people. They're men and male bodies. They just its. Let's make the academic value. We'll just call them. We're just a bunch of zits, and that way everyone get along. We're just a bunch of pus pockets, I guess, because we got to the point where we really don't have free speech. But under the radar, Supreme Court freedom of speech case sends shockwaves through courts and legislatures, which is a fascinating dynamic. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but a recent unanimous Supreme Court decision could result in government being unable to put any kind of content restrictions on speech, even misleading or safety-related messages. That's going to be interesting for the security-minded in the UN. That they're doing this for your security, your food security, your housing security, your economic security, your resource security, all these securities they're plundering. But now the courts come up with this relativistic thing, this reflexive thing, that there's no limit on speech, even if it's misleading. But you go and try and say something, and they're going to condemn you for it if you have a foundation for it. An ordinance in Gilbert, Arizona restricted the temporary signs churches sometimes use to direct worshipers to their services, but didn't restrict all types of signs. The Supreme Court ruled on June 18th in Reed versus Town of Gilbert that making the distinction was wrong. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote for the court that the content-based restrictions are subject to strict scrutiny and a difficult hurdle for government to clear. Remember, just government. None of these NGOs or NPOs or any of these other people, but government to clear. And this, remember, Title 42, Section 1981, go read C at the bottom and talk about the non-governmental organizations that are also going to be allowed to infringe and enforce and impose upon you civil rights, which is the right to pay exactions of every kind and no other. This has been since the Civil War, folks. Strict scrutiny is a difficult hurdle for government to clear. In this case, it's akin to using a bazooka to swat a fly. The strict scrutiny standard means that there must be a compelling governmental interest in the content, that the policy be narrowly tailored to fit the interest, and that the least restrictive means of achieving that interest is used. Thomas's decision declares that any restriction on content is unconstitutional on its face. The standard could make it difficult for government to restrict speech such as securities regulations, drug labeling, and speech meant to protect consumers, noted Adam Liptek of the New York Times. The ruling may undermine numerous laws, including those that regulate malpractice and misleading advertising, he said, as well as tax return disclosures, medical form confidentiality, and even petting zoo signs, according to Justice Stephen G. Breyer. As you see, the court's not making peace. It's making distortion and disquieting the peace. Now, on the one hand, we absolutely have the right to say everything, and the government should have no part. What you're going to find, though, is that they're using this on government in order to constrain it to allow this other nonsense to take hold under a reflexive condition. Reflex is like a little hammer on your knee, and you can't help it. Your knee's going to move. That's how the judges decide. How something hits them in the knee and it causes their leg to move will be how they rule. Underneath an ideology that says there is no actual diversity. You are subject to me. And he is subject to whoever he's subject to. There is no individual here. There is actually no free speech unless you're told it's free speech. And the only people that will have free speech are not those with principles. It'll be those that are confused and harmed and damaged. Those that have identities that are different than their biology, however they got those, and can impose that minority view on the majority. This is really the Republic speaking, but in a way that takes away your rights as well. Well, but you don't have any, do you, underneath this plan? So that's not even a factor, is it? You can't even use this as a factor once this position, this reflexive point actually gets its foundation in the in the quagmire. See, once they take away property, and they take away your rights, and they take away your remedies, and they put them all into one where you don't have any rights, property, or remedies, but what they give you, there is no theft by extortion, is there? Why, I'm telling you, you better advance it now before you don't have it. Again, we've heard in Oregon, one county was able to stop, no more GMO, it's gone in that county. Well, it sounds kind of ridiculous. The rest of the counties could, and they probably did and are. The point is that they could do it, but the rest can't because there was a law put in to stop them. This is what this stuff does here. You've got to tie the dots really close together on how this works. I try to do that behind the woodshed. I know it goes kind of quick. I talk for 2 hours nonstop. Again, no breaks, no commercials here. Thank you to the people that run the servers and those of you that donate to those to keep the servers running. As long as I've got a feed going out and into the server, you hear the voice. And I just put my content up and I go. And I hope I can remember all the little points I wanted to make and what I wanted to say as the week goes on, and to present to you the details of the evidences of what's going on in your reality, hoping, maybe beyond hope, that you'll finally get fed up enough, you'll see how they're doing it to you in order to stop it instead of just complain about it. With that gnashing of teeth and things like that. No, we got action we have to do here, and it's substantial too. It works pretty well. We just need more of us doing it. Doing things the correct way and not things that are the way that we've been told to do them because they're subversive. In other words, we even have it in the mining community. We get the Bar Association leading the charge like they're the ones that know about mining law. We get a bunch of other miners who I can't tell are on the take or not, and they say, okay, well, that's the only legal defense we have. And in fact, the lawyer's never going to do a property rights issue at all. It's going down to defeat before it even gets started. It's fascinating to watch how we do it to ourselves. We refuse to take responsibility and do it on our own. Now, that said, I keep telling you about this lawsuit. I was a party, a plaintiff, co-plaintiff, in a lawsuit where we did that. I put my property on the line to do this. But we came in such a formidable way, they couldn't respond. They could not open that can to let the whoop ass out on them, is what was the point. We would expose more by them answering than what happened when it went into default. And this is another tool, but that's all right. We'll do the enforcement that way. It's fine. I don't care how I get the judgment. In fact, I didn't expect them not to answer, but as soon as I saw the default, we took it. Why not? Unlawful immigrants can have rights. Gun rights appeals court rules was another interesting story, I thought. This is a while back. But I wanted to point out here, over the top of the story, what I always find interesting is people who have said, well, you have gun rights, but if you're an immigrant, you don't have a gun right. Wait a minute. People are people. They have a right to defend themselves. I tell that to the AK-47 holder in Afghanistan or the rocket launcher, the RPG holder in Iraq. I mean, just talk to me about gun rights. Guns, please. At any rate, so someone complains. We get the people on the right complaining that people that are immigrants all of a sudden don't have a right to have a gun. And there was a case that came down. But I wanted to point this case out because this is another way that the law, the so-called, gets it wrong. very simply, and it's really just reading the passages. It's not that difficult. In a case of Milwaukee man deported over a single 22 caliber cartridge. Folks, listen. This was a 22 caliber cartridge. He didn't have the gun. He just had the 22 shell. A federal appeals court ruled last week that even unlawful immigrants can be part of the, quote, public that enjoys a Second Amendment right to keep a gun for self-defense. But that wasn't the actual case. This is the spin that was put on it. Appears to be this, who this guy is, talking about is, even immigrants are the public, or the people. And I don't have a problem with that. That anybody has the right to defend themselves. That's a matter of course. I don't care where they come from. If they're here, they should have that right. They should have that right everywhere. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about defense. I'm talking about force against force. United States 7th Circuit Court of Appeals said even undocumented immigrants can be part of the people, quote, the people, protected by the Bill of Rights, though it upheld the man's conviction on a specific law that prohibits most such people from having guns. It is now clear that the Second Amendment right to bear arms is no second-class entitlement, and we see no principled way to carve out the Second Amendment and say that the unauthorized, or maybe all non-citizens, are excluded, Judge Diane Wood wrote from a panel that included Judges Frank Easterbrook and Joel Flan. No language in the amendment supports such a conclusion, nor, as we have said, does in a broader consideration of the Bill of Rights. Well, this was said, but if you look at the case, it actually didn't say that at all either. What they're doing is they're making that they can condition the Second Amendment, but they did it on a fraud, a misrepresentation. Out of the case, written by Wood, Chief Judge, when Mario Menza Rodriguez, a citizen of Mexico, was arrested on August 2013, he was carrying a 22 caliber cartridge. But it was what he did not have, documentation showing that he is lawfully in the United States, that concerns us now. The immigration status made his possession of the cartridge a crime under 18 U.S.C. 922 G5, which prohibits foreigners who are not entitled to be in the United States, whom we will call unauthorized aliens, from possessing firearms. Meza Rodriguez moved to dismiss the indictment that followed, arguing that 922 G5 impermissibly infringed on his rights under the Second Amendment of the Constitution. The District Court denied his motion on the broad ground that Second Amendment does not protect unauthorized aliens. The rationale swept too far, and we do not endorse it. This court's judgment, however, was correct. This court's judgment, however, was correct for a different reason. The Second Amendment does not preclude certain restrictions on the right to bear arms, including the one imposed by 922 G5. Let's go to 922 G5. What does it actually say? Is it pertaining to licensed importers and licensed manufacturers, licensed dealers, and licensed collectors? It shall be unlawful for a person to sell or otherwise dispose of any firearm or ammunition to any person knowingly or having reasonable cause to believe that such a person is an illegal or unlawfully in the United States, who, being an alien, is illegally and unlawfully in the United States, except as provided in subsection 2, has been submitted to the United States under a non-immigrant visa, or the term is defined as section of the Immigration Nationality Act. Now, what I found fascinating is that this section pertains to dealers. It didn't pertain to just anybody. It also pertained to guns and weapons or guns and ammunition here. So the 22 cartridge would be, but that it would have to be in commerce. Again, confirming that it relates to guns and dealers and such that I read before. Now, did you hear when I read that they incorporated 922's commercial connection where they say that they can attach the status of an unauthorized alien to the commission in violation of 922. No, you didn't. And this is where this case fell off the rails. They did not apply the commercial nexus in this case. In other words, there is no unauthorized alien that can have a gun. Because the rules here are the statutes are applied to commerce. And having a .22 shell in your pocket, it does not fulfill that element of the violation. That the court here overlooked, that little detail, is a fraud on the people, a fraud on the law, a fraud on this gentleman who got caught with a .22 caliber shell. And so what do you see the judges doing? And you know this is the bar members. They are now advancing the UN cause. They want all the pistols and all the guns with their knots tied in the barrel. And they want to be able to justify their position where they don't recite the law and apply it correctly. That we can't know that the decision made here is even valid on any point. But that if we look at the law, it does say what I said before. That everybody has the right to have a gun and the ammunition. You have the right to the gun, you have the right to the ammunition. As long as you're not in commerce with it among the states, which would include the international. That they misapplied here, bringing that decision international now, and disregarding the commercial nexus. As I've told you, is with regard to most everything in the federal code of Title 18. A commercial nexus. That I'm hoping for this gentleman's sake, that he has an attorney that's not an attorney in the bar, more of a lawyer, and advances the error that the Seventh Circuit did not apply the element of commerce when determining he was unauthorized to carry a defensive a self-defense appliance. And notwithstanding that, he might be a heinous criminal either. I don't know. But when you see these cases and you get to read them, and you really pay attention, you start to see how you're being done as a people. And I just wish there was more of us that are on target about this, that we could just talk about flooding the system with observations of this violation. They wouldn't know what to do with us. And I hear crickets. It's not that hard. I found that answer just by reading the first part of that decision and then running over to the law. Well, what does the section say? What does it pertain to? One of the elements is commerce being affecting commerce. How was having a .22 shell in his pocket affecting commerce? And notwithstanding, he never had the status of some arms dealer, a licensee, which brought him subject to that code. Now here we are. The licensee is subject by what? The application to be a licensee, not because of his status as some supposed illegal alien. So, hope that helped you today. I hope you can use some of this stuff in your analysis. I appreciate you tuning in. I do appreciate all the people coming for some reason to listen. Those of you that listen on Spreaker, I'll put up a podcast over on Real Liberty Media. It's got a lot of the noise, any noise you have on there taken out. That might be a little bit more better to hear. And you also have all the content links that you can go to read, because I don't touch a lot of that. I don't read from it so much. I give you enough setup to understand the context, but there's a lot more inside the documents that I show you that are evidence and places to go. UCY.TV, I appreciate that you are carrying the broadcast still, and you can support folks that can donate to server or ideas to Jewel, reallibertymedia.com. Grimner has been great to allow me a place here. You might want to donate to him. Also, he does all the back end to that site. A lot of work there. And then you have worldtruth.org, who are the servers. We could use that support there, and maybe even join up on the social network. I'm not too adept at it all, but there's lots of people that are in there and doing it. And then you have the FM and AM broadcasters that take my broadcast. You can send that around to wherever, folks, wherever you think you can. And markonthebeast.yahoo.com for those of you who have some considerations, donations to me as far as what you want me to speak to. Take care.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
Opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.